Good evening and welcome back. I'm Bill Bowie. Welcome to our committee and board meetings this evening, September 14th, 2022. It's 5:15, and I'll make the requisite motions so that we can conduct these meetings virtually. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the Fairfax County Park Emergency Ordinance, Park Authority Board needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record, as we did at our first electronic meeting. During our meeting, if you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand, and when I recognize you, please say your name. This will ensure you're recognized and the public knows who is speaking. If you intend to vote nay or abstain on any item, we will need to do a roll call on those votes. Because each member of this board is participating in these meetings from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating in these meetings to state your name and the location from which you are participating. And I ask each one of you to pay close attention to ensure that you can hear all of your colleagues. Following the roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member, and we will go alphabetically. Also, as the evening progresses, if additional board members join us for our meetings, we will ask them to verify their audibility and their location. Dr. Carter. Not here yet. Linwood Gorham.
This is Linwood Gorham, and I'm participating from my home in the Mount Vernon Magisterial District.
Tim Hackman.
Tim Hackman, participating from my residence in the Dranesville District.
Ron Kendall.
This is Ron Kendall, participating from my home in Mason District.
Faisal Khan.
This is Faisal Khan at my residence in Providence District.
Ken Quincy.
Ken Quincy, participating from my residence in the Providence District.
Kyle Stone. Not here yet. Mike Thompson.
Mike Thompson here from my office in Alexandria.
Jim Zook.
Jim Zook, participating from my home in the Springfield District.
And I'm Bill Bowie, participating from my home in the Hunter Mill District. Maggie Godboll and Abena Edu have excused absences this evening, and I hope Abena feels better. At this point, I'll pass the virtual gavel to Treasurer Hackman so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this board.
Tim Hackman, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Mike Thompson, I second the motion.
Tim Hackman, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Mr. Chairman, the motion passes.
Thank you, sir. Bill Bowie. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this board to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of this board and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that this board may conduct this meeting electronically via Zoom. It is so moved.
Tim Hackman, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
This is Mike Thompson. I second the motion.
Tim Hackman, is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Mr. Chairman, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Hackman. Now that preliminary matters are complete, we can begin with the administrative and board committee meetings. Reminder, when you're talking, please state your name, and I will hand it over to Chairman Khan.
All right, this is Faisal Khan. I call to the order of the Board Management and Administrative Committee meeting. And Allison, would you please present the items? Are we missing the audio?
Sorry, I was muted.
I don't
My
hear
apologies.
Yes.
This is Allison Rankin, and I'm going to review the policy updates for this evening. This slide's showing the process that we've been going through over the past several months, and we'll continue to go through for a little bit longer until we come out with an updated policy manual at the end. The slides that, or the policies that we're going to update or review tonight are shown here. We have 8 policies to get through, so hopefully we will be able to accomplish that. I'll get started. 102 is Mike Peter.
Thank you, Allison. Again, Mike Peter here with the Park Authority. Policy 102 directly focuses on indemnification and how we handle coverage for volunteers, officers, and employees. The main changes that we made here as we reviewed this is that we added clarification that Park Authority employees are considered employees of the county government who are working at the Park Authority. And this was a key distinction to make sure that we put this in here so all of the other risk management language in the county would be absolutely clear that there's a straight line that we're drawing to this specific language here. We also updated all of the references in the document to the current Memorandum of Understanding, and since that one will last for a few decades, we thought it was appropriate to go ahead and update those. And we also clarified in the document that according to county policy and how all this works through risk management, that it's the county executive who would determine when indemnification would apply to employees, officers, and/or volunteers, with, of course, the input and recommendation of our executive director. And this is specifically focused on issues where there needs to be a determination made as to whether or not the employee, officer, or volunteer was working in an official capacity when something may have happened that required the risk management processes to be set in motion. We did have one possible typo in that that Mr. Hackman had sent over to us. We used the word adjudged, alleged, but we should be using the word adjudged. Essentially, we're saying that no reimbursement for any attorney fees would be made if a person is found guilty, but it certainly would be appropriate if that person is innocent. That's the intent with that phrase there. So really, we just clarified and updated the information here to make sure that it was in line with county risk management policy. Any questions?
I just had a question. It talks about the memorandum of understanding, and so this makes us consistent with the current memorandum of understanding. But was it also the process before now that the county would make the decisions on the employees for the Park Authority, or did the Park Authority actually have a role?
It is my understanding that that process has not changed. We had to clarify that our old language was actually in conflict with the language associated with the county. So our executive director is not the final determination point for this point, and has not been, but provides that advice and recommendation to the county executive. So we're clarifying how it should have been written all along.
So I had one question real quick. Does this in any way how to say it? So this board has a unique relationship with our executive director versus the other staff who, you know, we work with the executive. Technically, we work with the executive director. The executive director oversees staff. Does this in any way imply inserting the county executive between the board and the executive director?
That is not the intent in any way. The intent with that county executive piece of it is, again, to just make sure it's in line with county process, but not to get in between that relationship, only when there is a final determination that needs to be made on whether or not the indemnification clauses apply to someone who may or may not have been acting on behalf of the county or the park authority.
Okay, so this is we feel confident, and I guess we'll double check with the county attorney, but that this is narrowly written enough that it doesn't. I mean, classifying everybody in the park authority as an employee of the county, and you know, seems to say that, you know, theoretically the county executive oversees everybody. That we're confident this is narrowly cast enough that it's only going to deal with indemnification issues and not deal with any other. I don't want to create an issue where the executive director in theory has two bosses all of a sudden.
Yes, thank you for that question. When we worked through the review of this policy, we worked it through both with risk management and the Office of the County Attorney did review this, and it's the consensus opinion that this is only narrowly focused on this and is not a jumping off point for other issues like that may arise.
Okay, so I have a for instance, Ron Kendall. I have a for instance. What happens if someone volunteers, is injured, the park authority director determines that they were a registered volunteer and quite covered under what our expectations, and the county executive says, no, that's not true? What happens then?
That's a good question. What the MOU and what this policy refer to is that we follow the county procedures for how we identify and enroll volunteers for our different programs. So the determination would be based on whether or not that county policy was followed. So this does not contemplate a difference between those two. It's a matter really focusing on whether or not that volunteer was officially a volunteer and whether or not that volunteer was officially working on county or park authority business at the time that something may have happened.
I'm sorry, I don't. So, Ron, this may be just picking too detailed into your question. My understanding of reading this policy is that the answer to Ron's question is the county executive makes the final determination. In fact, in part 6, it says, shall only be entitled to indemnification, therefore, where the claim shall have been determined by the county executive, director of the park authority, upon the recommendation of the county attorney to have resulted in action switch. So that ultimately, if there is a disagreement of any sort, that the county executive is the final arbiter of what happens.
In indemnification, I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
totally agree with you.
That all then coincides with all the county policies. So essentially what we're saying here is that this policy makes sure that we're in line with the county policy and all of the indemnification and insurance coverage issues.
No, I understand. I'm just saying in Ron's example, where there's a disagreement on the end result between the park authority's executive director and the county executive, this is set up because in the end there has to be somebody that makes the decision. This is set up that the county executive is the one that does that.
That is correct. Thank you. Thank you for parsing that out. That is correct with this, that the county executive would be the final determinant on that. But again, with the county procedures for a volunteer who is officially enrolled as a volunteer and meets the criteria as set forth, we wouldn't expect there to be a distinction. It's not necessarily here a difference of perhaps opinion. The final determination would flow up to the county executive. In this case, the Park Authority executive director would be acting as other department directors here, and how that flows up through the county executive leadership in this narrow focus here on indemnification.
Okay, but I'm still at the what if we disagree point. Is there a mechanism for the Park Authority to identify that we disagree within the process? Or are we just supposed to shut our lips?
Whether there's a disagreement or not, the final arbiter, as stated and consistent with county policy, is going to be the county executive.
Sarah, you want to say something?
I think it's been covered, but basically from the county's policy, it states, and I believe the ordinance for the county states that the county executive is the final decision maker. And so if we wanted to change that, we would need to change the county ordinance to modify it to the executive director. So the suggestion from the county attorney was align the language with what's in the ordinance, with the county executive being the final decision maker.
So basically, regardless of the situation or agreement or disagreement, the buck stops at the county executive no matter what. But that's the answer.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions?
And that's basically a protection for the Park Authority.
Yes. Yes.
Sarah Baldwin, Deputy Director, we fall under the county's insurance. So, if there is a claim, all of those claims right now are all going through the county, and county risk management is making the decision on those claims.
Thank you, Sarah. So any other questions? Any further discussion? Well, seeing and hearing none, I want to thank you, Mike, and also Allison. And with that,
we've got a few more policies to get through.
Go ahead.
Sorry. 200 is Cindy McNeil.
Hi, this is Cindy McNeil, Manager of Real Estate Services. So policy 200 is the use of parkland for non-park purposes. This is a brand new policy. And it's supposed to, it's kind of overarching for the 200 series. It formalizes the current practices for addressing use of parkland for non-park purposes. So first and foremost, this policy emphasizes that the Park Authority shall ensure that impacts for non-park use are minimized to the greatest extent practical, and impacts are mitigated at equal or greater natural, cultural, and or recreational value. Any public hearings for non-park proposals, such as those related to major infrastructure projects, are to be coordinated with the Park Authority. We are not recommending that this policy indicate that the Park Authority hold additional public hearings just due to staff resources. So as the other agencies know, they are to invite us, and we are to be a part of the responses and for every one of the projects that impacts parkland. So requests will be subject to Park Authority staff review, approval, and issuance of land rights per occurrence. They don't get to just come in one time for a project and think that they have land rights for everything related to the project. So we're going to maintain control of what happens on our land. This policy will add strength to policies 201, 203, 208, 209, 210, and 211. And it's applicable primarily to infrastructure projects. The other events and other recreational activities that are guided by the prevailing operational policies will not change the way that they are working. Are there any questions?
How does that change from our current policy? Why is this necessary? Obviously, we've given easements before for infrastructure projects and stuff like that. Why is this necessary at this point?
Because we found ourselves for easements, encroachments telecom, we found ourselves repeating ourselves. So those policies will now refer to this one. This one is the strong one that says that these are the expectations, and all the other policies now refer to this rather than having to rewrite it in all of the other policies.
Can I, Jill Cole, Executive Director, I just wanted to add into that. A lot of times also there's this assumption that when they go forward that, you know, it's a done deal that they're going to be able to use, you know, parkland for whatever it is that they're doing. And like, as Cindy said, to put it out there that sort of we have this non-park use of parkland that needs to be approved by us prior to it. It strengthens and gives us a little bit more teeth so that they know that they have to back their projects up and ensure that they are doing it to where we're nodding our heads and the mitigation or the minimization of that impact is palatable. So instead of putting a statement into each of the 200s that sort of restates the fact that we non-park use of parkland needs to be minimized to the greater extent practicable, we thought it better just to create a 200 and then in those other policies refer people back to this one, you know, overarching statement.
And Cindy, I did understand you to say that this is limited to infrastructure. It's referring to infrastructure.
Yes, it's primarily applicable to infrastructure projects. Yes.
Okay, well, primarily and exclusively are two different things. What would be an example of something where it would be allowed for something other than infrastructure?
I can't think of anything, but I didn't want to make it exclusive in case the situation came up and then we'd have to revise the policy. So right now, a lot of the requests we are getting are for transportation, for telecommunications, a lot of fiber optic. And so that's really how we see this applying so far.
But it counts for anything. Somebody proposes to put I don't know, make something up on parkland. We're looking as to the purpose of this land is for the perpetuity of the residents of the county to enjoy for natural, cultural, recreational value. It's not to put necessarily a salt burn on top of. There are instances where for the public good, there is no other place, and for public safety reasons, we need to accommodate and work with VDOT or whoever it is to make sure that they have salt readily available, in which case we want to minimize it. But it sort of helps with the whole at the beginning. I don't know that that's not really what this land was purchased and stewarded for.
Is it intended to be exclusive to other government agencies?
No.
How about an ice cream stand?
Well, the non-park use. So we're looking at as to whether or not it fits in with our mission, vision, and values, right? So if we're having an event and we have an ice cream stand that's out there and it helps with the social interaction, we're looking at it saying, okay, this activity adds to our major function and is part of our vision. Somebody wants to put a pickleball court or wants to build a baseball field or something that works within what we're trying to do, that is park use of parkland. So it goes with our park major mission. And that's where that deciding factor is at the beginning, as does this work with what we're trying to accomplish, or is this contrary to what this land is trying to accomplish?
All right, I hope it's tight enough. That last example seems a little broad to me. Anyway, but if it has to always be approved by us, then I guess that's our catch.
Exactly. I think that gives us another tool in the box and just say sort of kind of safety net and control, like Jay mentioned. And it's like we have a say in every step of the way. So that's a safety net that it's good to have. Ken, you want to say something?
Yeah, just in response to Jay's response, this really doesn't really get into the private use of a resident's use of parkland for non-parkland activities, and I'm leading to encroachment.
It does. It's not just public I don't think we wrote that in there, correct, Cindy? It's not just public projects, it's all non-park use of parkland. So this gives us the very broad umbrella to be able to point back to, why can't I have my shed on parkland? It's non-park use of parkland. It's prohibited by the Park Authority Board. Why can't I put a driveway through? It's non-park use of parkland. It's prohibited unless the board deems that it's for the public good, i.e. the salt barn, i.e. something else that happens. It gives us that, as we said earlier, it gives us that flexibility and that more teeth.
Okay, well, we have an encroachment issue, as you know, and that's why I raised the question. Thank you, Jay.
Cindy, Ron Kendall, I'm wondering about the third bullet on your slide, because I'm trying to remember the actual text of what I read, and I think it said proposals should be coordinated with FCPA. I like the shall language better, but I don't remember if the shall is in the actual language or if it says should.
I'll have to check that. That's a good question. I don't remember which word was used. So you would like it to say shall?
Yeah, it should say shall.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Cindy.
And of all crazy things, I think it says will. Any request for non-park purposes on parkland, such as survey, access, easement, staging, etc., will be subject to Park Authority staff review, approval, issuance of land right per occurrence.
Even better.
So is it okay to leave it with will? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Hi, it's Liz Crowell, Archaeology and Collections Branch Manager, and I will be addressing Policy 206, Museum and Archaeological Collections, and I apologize because my camera's not functioning. What we've done with this policy is we've made a few updates to the language to make sure that it more clearly reflects the intent of the guiding documents. And in that vein, we deleted the word discourages so as not to be repetitive. And previously, the organization that we were coordinating with was American Association of Museums. They've changed their name to American Alliance of Museums. So we've corrected that so that it's updated. And we've also updated the link to the curation of federally owned or administered archaeological collections, which was updated by the National Park Service on May 16th, 2022. So we have gone ahead and updated that so that it's correct. And those are the changes that were made.
Any questions on 206? All right, 207, Mary Oline.
Probably mute.
We can't hear you, Mary.
You might want to unmute.
We having technical problems?
Maybe we can.
I believe so. I can't hear as well.
Maybe we can go to the next one and come back.
Yep. All right, 208 is John Burke.
John.
Hello. Good evening. This is John Burke, Branch Manager for Natural Resources. This is Policy 208, which relates to protections of lands and facilities, and it is closely tied with the initiative to define inappropriate or unapproved use of Park Authority property, as well as define encroachments and the expected resolution of said encroachments. So as part of the edits on this policy, one of the attempts was to further define what an encroachment actually is. And we added a few things to further elaborate what we're looking at here. So that includes the unapproved park activities that would remove natural resources from parks, to include plants, animals, soil, stones, things like that. Also, elements that disturb soil, to include erosive activities, and also creating trails and similar linear elements into Park Authority property. On top of that, Park Authority identifies itself as trying to be a good neighbor to our neighboring properties, and as such, we added into this document about encroachment that we expect that neighbors, once encroachments are identified, will work with Park Authority to voluntarily come into compliance to cease and remedy encroachment activities and conditions on Park Authority property. Further, we incorporated language from the new Park Policy 200, the use of parklands for non-parkland purposes, just to make sure that any additions from that new policy were incorporated into the revisions in Policy 208. It also establishes firmly that Park Authority is, or has the authority rather, to determine if activities are approved or not, and whether those activities, either temporary or permanent, will be permitted on Park Authority property. So we are basically the group that's approving these activities. And if we are not approving them, be it trail building, something that causes erosion, something that disturbs soil, or something that is removing resources from Park Authority property, then therefore that is defined as an encroachment. And then finally, in order to engage in activities that are permitted on Park Authority property, or commonly permitted on Park Authority property, that coincide or agree with standard park use, even if residents want to engage in those activities, and they are laid out in the document itself, that it requires written permission from Park Authority to do so. So that includes things like building trails, removing resources such as invasive plants, or adopting a park or athletic field. And that is all the additions for Park Policy 208. All right, any questions?
Yeah, I've got one. Ken Quincy. John, where does enforcement come into play? We say we want them to voluntarily abide by our regulations, but if they don't, where does that come into play?
So enforcements to date take a couple of approaches. If there are encroachments that are in the RPA, for example, and that can be something from as simple as mowing, clearing land, clearing land and vegetation, to installing structures. In those instances, we typically involve LDS to serve as the agency to enforce those encroachments. For encroachments outside of the RPA, to include some of those same defined encroachments, park operations will typically serve a letter to the neighboring properties, or the individual who has encroached on Park Authority property, if they can be identified, and follow up to seek remediation for that damage or for that loss of resources. However, those actions are not defined in this policy. This is simply stating, what an encroachment is, and then how activities that would be conceived as or perceived as encroachments are permitted by Park Authority, and also establishes the right of Park Authority to provide approval for some of these activities. It does not go into enforcement.
Great, thank you, John.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, we'll go back to 207. I think Mary has her mic working now.
So is that working now? Excellent. This is Mary O'Lean, Operations Branch Manager for the Resource Management Division. And those of you that have visited our nature centers and Green Spring Gardens know that we have live collections. This policy demonstrates our commitment to ethical and legal practices in our acquisition and care for our living collections. In addition, Green Spring Gardens plant collection is accredited by the American Alliance of Museums. So the changes that we made are pretty minor for this policy. We adopted stronger language related to collecting, displaying, or holding endangered or rare species and clarified the permit requirements. We changed discourages collection to does not collect or hold without the proper permits, and it specifies the state levels for listed and rare species that are affected. And those are the S1, S2, and S3 state ranked species. And then finally, there is a related appendix, the guidelines for living collections for plants and animals. I am currently working with our staff to update that document. Any questions? Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right. We'll jump back ahead to 209, which is Cindy McNeil again.
Hi, Cindy McNeil, Real Estate. Okay, so we didn't revise too much here. We made that the final disposition for disposal of parkland is subject to Park Authority approval. This is sort of a reaction to inquiries that we've received where others have tried to deem the disposal satisfactory. And so the Park Authority is going to be the ultimate party that determines whether or not a disposition is necessary. We've incorporated the new Park Policy 200, use of parkland for non-park purposes. Again, this is for inquiries where others want to extend their backyards and buy a piece of parkland, or they've built something and they want to, I guess, rectify their encroachment by obtaining additional land. The last revision is we are requesting that adequate compensation based on fair market value or established rates be expected if we dispose of land unless another agreement is in place. Are there any questions?
This is Linwood. Linwood, I have a question. When I was reading through this, there was quite a bit of language moved around in this. I like the first statement, and I just wanted to confirm because I didn't see where it had too much difference, but the way you're presenting it, you believe and staff believes that it strengthens our position.
Yes.
In being able to not dispose of parkland if we don't want to. Is that correct?
Yes, it's our authority our approval if we want to dispose of it, not someone else demanding that we dispose of it.
Okay. Yeah, because I think this section in the last review of the policy was changed a fair amount also, and it's something very close to my heart, and I just want to make sure it's not weakened in any way. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Cindy, this is Bill. When we say subject to Park Authority approval, shouldn't we be more specific and say Park Authority board approval?
Yes. We can, I guess that was implied. Yes, we can state that.
Okay. And then the second thing is this in no way crosses over, interferes, anything with regard to the land bank?
No.
Okay.
That's why we say unless other agreements are in place.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question.
Well, but you also have, this is Mike, you also have literally number 6 on the disposals in accordance with the BOS FCPA land bank agreement. Right? And doesn't that?
Yeah.
So I think that codifies it even more, that we specifically say that specific agreement is, in and of itself important.
We may want to highlight that agreement. Even though it's not used that much, it's something that could come up at any time.
You are correct. Okay, I'll take.
It's funny. It's funny you say that. I was actually wondering if because it says here land bank agreement and First Amendment, these documents are on file. I'm wondering whether or not if they're online or should be made available online, so there could be a link to them, so that people could better better theoretically go see what it is, than be deterred by, oh, I have to go into the office and ask for it. Met with resounding silence.
Let us this is Amy Vosper, Deputy Director. Let us take a look at that, because those documents also are linked to FMD and a couple other agencies. So let us look and see if that's possible and what we can do to make it more transparent.
Thank you, Amy, for breaking the silence.
All right, policy 210 for easements is Cindy.
Okay. So this clarifies that easements on non-park, there's two easements in two directions. Okay, so the orange bullet there, easements on non-park properties. It's easements on other people's properties for park purposes may be negotiated as part of a rezoning or a land development case. And the most common request would be for a trail easement on someone else's property. We also, so we just wanted to make that distinction. We incorporated the new park policy 200 for use of parkland for non-park purposes. So this park policy 200 applies for others applying for easements on our property. Okay, so a stipulation is that non-park alternatives must be pursued first, which is our common practice, but we wanted to state it. And we also state that mitigation must be included in the proposed project that needs the easement. It's not going to be, okay, give us the land now for the project, for say an infrastructure project, and we will go mitigate later in phase 2 of the project. So we're requesting that the mitigation be part of the project as it is underway at the moment. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Cindy.
And one last policy is 211 is stormwater management. Andy Miller.
Good evening. I'm Andy Miller with the Planning and Development Division. Policy 211 had minor changes. The main one was we included a sentence that says any proposals for non-park use on parkland are subject to policy 200, use of parkland for non-park purposes. Cindy described in detail policy 200. Other than that, 2 of our 3 regulatory links were valid. The one that wasn't was updated. And so the policy for stormwater management continues to affirm our willingness to cooperate, but with an eye towards protecting our natural and cultural resources and not hindering our stewardship or other uses. Any questions?
All right. Wrapping up, the next meeting will be at the first meeting in October, and we'll bring the 300 policies to the board to discuss then. And
okay, well, I want to thank everyone who took part in this wonderful presentation. Great work, Ellison and the team. And
Faisal, I just a question. I may have asked this before, but can we create and it may not be possible because these are policies that require board approval, but is it possible to create some kind of a carve out that says when you're just trying to update links that might otherwise be broken, So because some document got its name changed by the state or whatever, that those can be automatically updated in the policy without having to come to us. Because it just seems to me that we don't want a broken link sitting in a policy for 2 or 3 years until we get around to reviewing something again.
This is Sarah Baldwin, Deputy Director. Mike, we often update broken links in policies when we find out they're broken. So yeah, that happens on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussions before I wrap it up? Seeing and hearing none. Allison and the team, thank you very much for the great presentation. And with that, the administration and board management meeting is adjourned.
All right, Chairman Gorman.
We need to bring Kyle in, right?
Yes.
Is that my cue?
That's your cue.
All right, Kyle Stone, Bragg District Park representative calling from George Mason University.
Thank you, Kyle.
This is Linwood Gorm, and I'd like to call the Park Operations Committee to order. In doing so, I'd like to turn it over to Kevin Williams for our first item.
All right, good evening. My name is Kevin Williams. I am the acting director for park operations at this time. And I'm going to, in an effort to speed us up, go through this update for the fourth quarter FY22 project highlights for park operations. Next slide, please. And just a brief rundown of how we prioritize our projects. We're doing our condition assessments annually. We're ranking those conditions and our priorities, putting forward a project selection list for consideration and requesting approval from the director's office. Next slide, please. This should have been on the Q1 report. So we will skip to the next one and you'll see this again in Q1. Wakefield pickleball tennis. This one was actually substantially complete in last fall, but we had the grand opening in June with the punch list items completed. And this was the conversion of the platform tennis courts that were there and converting that to dedicated pickleball, as well as renovating tennis courts 9 and 10 and the practice court, and all that was funded through our general fund sinking fund for just under $310,000. Project managed by Karen DeVore. Next slide, please. The Jefferson District Golf Course patio renovation, Providence District, some ADA improvements, Trex railing, installing brick pavers, etc. $26,000 project managed by Russ Davis. Next slide. MLK restroom and fence restoration, replacing fixtures, upgrading the interior of the bathroom, adding LED lighting, etc. Just under $100,000 project managed by Ron Pearson. Next slide, please. Several court renovations. We have Burgundy Park in Mount Vernon, McLean Central in Dranesville, standard tennis court renovations, resurfacing, relining. You can see the dollar amounts there, and all those are managed by Karen DeVore. Again, next slide. Moving on to basketball, Hideaway Park in Providence, Lake Accotink in Braddock, Pohick Stream Valley in Springfield. Hideaway Park was a proffer we were spending the remainder of. That was a replacement of a basketball court and some minor resurfacing. And then the other two projects were more heavy duty renovations and repairs. Again, all managed by Karen DeVore. Next slide. Some trail improvements in Difficult Run Stream Valley in the Dranesville District, and Folly Lake Sugarland Run Stream Valley, also in the Dranesville District. Some trail renovations, standard repaving, culvert replacements, and some fair weather crossing repairs to the stepping stones you can see in the bottom picture. Again, Karen DeVore is the project manager on that. Next slide, please. More trails at Bush Hill Park and Franconia District Park, both in Franconia District. Putting in new signs, as well as standard repaving of asphalt trails. Again, Karen is the project manager on that. Next slide. And lastly, a plethora of infield renovations at several parks in Mount Vernon and Franconia District, Bucknell, Collingwood, MLK, Gristmill, Pohick Estates, Franconia Park, Lewis High, Franconia District Park, and Jefferson Manor Park, managed by our Area 3 manager, William Douglas, all totaling a $22,000 and change for infield renovations. And that is it. Any questions about any of the projects?
Thank you very much, Kevin. Like to now ask Dan to present us with our second matter for the Park Operations Committee.
Good evening, everyone. This is Dan Sutherland with the Park Operations Division. Tonight, we have for you a grant request from McLean Youth Soccer Association. Next slide, please. So seeing a need for restrooms for the fields and other park activities, McLean Youth Soccer has offered to partner with the Park Authority to fund the construction and storage for restrooms and storage building at Lewinsville Park. Lewinsville Park, as you may be aware, has a variety of facilities and activities such as fields, courts, playground, garden plots, farmers market, as well as the annual McLean Day Festival. The restrooms will replace portable toilets that are currently present at the park. And then one thing to note about this slide is that image is just a conceptual representation of what the restrooms will look like, but it is not actually the final appearance of the restrooms. Next slide, please. So the location for the restrooms is just off the parking lot near the synthetic fields, which is the current location for the portable toilets. Since this popular park was, since it is a very popular park, and the community is very engaged, as you all may be aware. The Park Authority held a community virtual meeting on the 16th of June to present the restroom and storage building proposal. Comments were received through the close of the comment period on July 18th, and they indicated overwhelming community support for the project. Next slide, please. So MYS is requesting $20,000 from the grant program to help fund the project. The total project estimate is a range of $600,000 to $700,000. It includes the $220,000 cost estimate for the design phase. If the grant is approved, the $20,000 grant funding, along with the donation, $200,000 donation from MYS, would be the funds sufficient to complete the project, or at least the design and the permitting phase of the project. Upon completion of the 100% design of the facility, MYS will provide the remaining funds to the Park Authority to complete the project. As you all may recall, MIS has contributed millions of dollars to improve sports facilities at Lewinsville Park, as well as several other parks across the county or across the McLean area over the years. The Park Authority Board for the Drainsville, Park Authority Board member for the Drainsville District supports the approval of this grant request. The Planning and Development Division will manage the project, and the timeline for the completion of the project is fiscal year 2025. Of course, that could vary depending on the timing of the completion of design work, as well as the availability of funding from MIS. Next slide, please. So matching funds are available to award this grant. MYS, again, is requesting $20,000. Funds are available in the amount of $13,260 and change from the old previously released grant funds, and the balance of $6,739 and change is from the newly released grant funds, which the board has pending action on later tonight. Contingent upon, this whole thing is contingent upon the board's approval of the grant. And at that point, if it is approved, all previously released grant funds will have been used. Of course, the new released funds are pending action later tonight, and if approved, the balance in the Massimo Grant Fund will be $793,260 and change. Please note that the maintenance for the storage room that is interior to the building will be the responsibility of MYS. The remaining portions of the building will be the Park Authority's Park Operations Division responsibility. However, MYS has agreed to provide a one-time payment of $55,000 and change to cover the estimated annual cost for cleaning, repairs, and utility costs for the next 10 years for the operation of the facility. Next slide. Any questions?
Yeah, this is Linwood. Are we going to approve this in the board meeting tonight, or is that going to come before us next board meeting?
I believe it is coming to the board tonight.
Right.
But after the funding changes for Maston Brook, right?
That's correct. As far as I know, Mike will be talking about the funding aspect of it in the following committee, later on committee.
And that will come before the board tonight also. And we'll just make sure they go in the right order, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I love when we spend $20,000 to help people spend hundreds of thousands. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Tim Hackman. I totally agree with you, and I don't know at this point if there might not be another Maston Brook application for the construction portion, but even spending $40,000 when you're getting $600,000 to $700,000 plus a grant for the maintenance costs, it's an unbelievable leveraging. So kudos and many thanks to McLean Youth Soccer, not only for this project, but all that they have done in the past and will continue to do in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely agree completely. Any other questions?
Yeah, Linwood, actually, my question goes a little bit to what Tim was saying. Dan, the Maston Brook grant, they can do $20,000 a year, even if it's across multiple projects. Can they do $20,000 for this phase? Can they come back and do another $20,000? Ask for us for another $20,000 grant in a year and a half or whatever it is for the actual construction phase of this program?
A good question. Historically, we would not approve such an arrangement because the design phase is integral to the actual construction phase. Now, if you take something like, say, a synthetic field, and we talk about the first phase being the design and then the construction of the field. However, then a couple of years down the road, they want to put in lights. At that point, that could be separately funded. But in this case, we've historically said that the initial construction is tied to the design phase.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, yes, I just thought, this is Jim Zook. I'm wondering how this moves forward to, and I don't object to, especially the terms and conditions of the balance between what we're putting in versus the other party putting in. How is this going to work with regard to our outreach to communities who don't have the capacity to come up with significant funds? And I don't need an answer tonight. I just think we need to be thinking about that with respect to what, how we might, maybe there's already been thought about this, how we might address what our contributions, what our community engagements might be with regard to what I'll refer to as disadvantaged communities, to effectuate a similar outcome with regard to facilities in those areas. So no need to respond this evening, but I just think we need to, if we haven't already, incorporate that into our thinking.
Linwood, Jim, you took the words right out of my mouth. I certainly applaud and support this aspect, and McLean Youth Soccer and those folks have done a wonderful job and contributed so much. But this is very much at the core of the issues that we've been talking about in terms of equity. And There is a big discussion with the Sports Tourism Task Force, as well as the Board of Supervisors, about bathrooms in general. Number one priority as they relate to disadvantaged high schools that have not been able to do this, and their ability, same as it was with synthetic turf fields, to kind of fall in line. They don't have the booster groups and so on and so forth. So I know that there's some investigation specifically around bathroom, restroom facilities county-wide that is being looked at, and has caught a lot of people's attention, but I certainly couldn't agree with you more.
This is Linwood. I also couldn't agree with you more. And basically, you started talking first. I was basically going to say the same thing that you were going to say. But one thing to the program's credit that we have done in the past, and I didn't originally necessarily agree with this, but I've learned to see the wisdom in it over time. But fortunately, we do try to be open-minded and use in-kind services and stuff like that as the matches for the Masson Brooks. And I know that doesn't fill the gap completely, not even close, but it is a step in the right direction. Do we have any other questions? I thought I heard somebody else. Ron?
Yeah, Ron Kendall, I mean, we probably need to revisit the concept of Maston Brook and the relationship it has to the community itself, and whether or not there needs to be a different grant that's maybe more proportional when we get to equity issues. I'm not sure you want to have an equity component as a requirement in the Maston Brook, or a percent of annual funds based on equity, but maybe a whole different grant would make sense.
Can you hear me? This is Jim Zook. What I think we need to keep into mind is that I'll just say our more affluent areas, there is a connection and a facility to move people forward in a similar direction, seeking, whatever they like to seek. And, that's not, I don't mean that to be negative at all. What I'm saying is that part of our outreach, I believe, to our lower income disadvantaged areas needs to be as much as helping them build the facilities that they would use and benefit from, but also building the community that is similar to, similar to a collection of individuals who have, I'll use the word power, probably wrong word, to work with the county to effectuate their needs in a similar manner as those who are more experienced in that have been able to do over a number of years. So to me, there's a grant for facilities aspect to this, but there's also a building of community ownership and involvement in that that I think is essential to making this work over the long term.
Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Baldwin, Deputy Director for the Park Authority. And this is actually on our equity action plan to review whether or not the Maston Brook grant program is equitable and if changes should be made. And Dan and the Park Ops team have done a great job of analyzing the program, where the grants have gone to date. And we'll be bringing a presentation to the board in the coming months with our findings and discussion about where we go from here with the grant and whether or not changes need to be made or modifications to make the program equitable moving forward.
I'm sorry, please understand that I'm not criticizing that program. but maybe echoing that, well, two things. One, our approach in the other areas needs to be one of support to create the facilities and also support for community organization. And so don't take my comment as trying to take away from Masterbrook. It may be aligned with another board member who suggested maybe there's a different program. I don't know about that. But I just know that we need I think that we need a multi-pronged approach that deals with community building as well as supporting facilities that are necessary. And clearly in McLean areas and other areas of the county, we don't need anything with regard to community building and their effectiveness. So not to be too redundant, I'm not criticizing the Masterbrook program at all. I just think we need to think about how we move forward with our equity program in affecting what we want to accomplish.
And I think that there definitely needs to be more communication in those affected areas that we're talking about the availability of Maston Brook. Those folks don't even know Maston Brook exists. And so when you start talking about things like sweat equity and other things that could be brought into the equation, there are certainly a number of paths to improve parks and provide more access and better facilities once that education is out there and people know that they can apply, and we can walk them through it in assisting them in financing those projects.
Right. Anybody else? Not seeing anybody. Thank you very much, Dan. Do we have consensus to move this forward?
Yes.
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 Does anyone else have any more matters for the Planning and Development Committee? I'm sorry, the Park Operations Committee. I've turned my page. Right. Hearing none, the Park Operations Committee is adjourned.
Thank you, Linwood. Chairman Quincy, you're on.
Ken Quincy, and I will call the Planning and Development Committee meeting to order. And I will first ask Director Cole to introduce our new Planning and Development Division Director.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very happy to, does he have his camera on? To introduce, there he is, to introduce Brendan Hannafin. He's our new Planning and Development Division Chief. I'm not going to give you his bio. I'm gonna let him sort of give a really short background as to who he is. We're very excited to bring him on board. So Brendan.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me, everybody. This is a short bio. My last job was with Prince William County in the same role. Little different. Fairfax is quite a bit bigger, but the same type of projects, same pressures and all. Before that, I was the Historic Preservation Division Chief for Prince William County, restoring the county's historic properties. And then before then with the Department of Conservation and Recreation for a number of years. So very happy to be here. Been in parks my whole life. Worked summers as a maintenance guy in the 80s. So very happy to be here.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. Just a few words. I don't think you'll find a better group of people to work with than the Park Authority Board. So we'll go easy on you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, I will now ask Paul Charest to introduce the first item on the Planning and Development Committee agenda. Paul.
Right, I'm Paul Charest with the Planning and Development Division. And this item is discussion of the FY 2023 Planning and Development Division Annual Work Plan. So the Park Authority Board approved the 5-year capital improvement program for FY 22 to 26, which incorporates the 2020 park bond. So this plan includes plan schedules for all the projects that were included in the park bonds based on guidance received from the county executive and the Department of Management and Budget is required to meet the county's overall capital improvement program goals and DMB's financial management strategy for the sale of general obligation bonds based on the current budget outlook through FY24. So the draft FY23 work plan reflects the continuation of active projects with schedules that extend into FY23 and beyond, as well as projects that are scheduled to start in FY23 as included in that CIP. So the CIP basically dictates a lot of the schedules that you'll see in the work plan. So the work plan separates projects into a number of different categories, and you see all those in the item, so I won't read all those, but they're basically tabs in the spreadsheet, which you have in a PDF format. So the projects highlighted in yellow are new to the work plan and are scheduled to start in FY23. Staff will continue to report actual project progress compared with the scheduled dates on the work plan on a quarterly basis to the board. And I guess we should be on the next slide here. So please advance that. And so the yellow projects most of these are started in FY23. However, there were some that were initiated during the fiscal 2022. So those would continue, but they show up as new because they weren't in last year's work plan. So an example of that would be, for instance, the Sugar Land Run Bridge that we added over the past year. So then highlights of the proposed 23 work plan are listed in the item narrative, and we won't go through all the different types of projects here. So then next slide, please. So with large dollar value projects moving forward at various park facilities, so at Patriot Park North and of course the Mount Vernon Rec Center, staff continue to be constrained by the bond cash flow limitations per fiscal year as part of the county's debt management strategy for maintaining bond ratings. So the biggest impact coming up here is going to be the Mount Vernon Rec Center contract award. And this will all be consistent with the park board approved funding plan going back to March of this year. And the update to that funding model, the amount of the model is essentially the same, and we're awaiting the final bids that come in that we receive. But basically, there's $25 million anticipated from ARPA funding, and then the residual balance that would be needed would be from bond funding. And this is currently out for bids now. It was advertised starting September 7th. And the bid opening is tentatively scheduled for October 12th, subject to addendums that may be issued. So we're continuing to work with Public Works on that project. So staff is currently managing, and this is the other constraint on our cash flow, is all the $32 million of active construction projects. So this includes projects such as Patriot Park North, the baseball complex, Sully Woodlands Education Center, Lake Accotink Dam stream crossing, then Hogue Park development and North Hill Park development, as well as the Wakefield skate park renovation. So there's a number of other projects, but they all add up to 32 million. Next slide, please. All right, so in light of the cash flow restrictions, and these were presented back in July at the July 23rd meeting in the, I believe it was the Budget Committee, but these were presented to the Park Board, and there was some adjustments put forward in the schedules on different projects to be able to accommodate our cash flow. So there's a restriction annually as to how much bond capacity we can spend. So the biggest impacts are for the Audrey Moore Rec Center, which construction is anticipated with the 2026 bond. So design development will resume in FY23, but we're having to ramp up to that starting ideally at mid-year in January. And then the collections facility is also rescheduled to start construction with an anticipated date with the 26 bond. And then design, development, and permitting is proceeding right now. And then at some point when we get our permits, we'd have to wait then for construction. Then there's the Laurel Hill Central Green Phase 2. That's the ball fields. Construction would be anticipated with the 26 bond. And then also design development's underway for that. And then the Lee Rec Center, or whatever that gets to be named eventually, but that facility, there's various life cycle replacement projects that are needed right now. So some of those are being implemented, but the remainder of the project is being deferred. Some of that funding may end up being used for the Mount Vernon Rec Center. So those are the major impacts. So there's some minor changes to different projects if you go all throughout the whole list of schedules. Next slide, please. And for planning project updates, Sam Hudson's going to cover this slide.
Yep. Hi, Sam Hudson, Park Planning Branch Manager. For our planning work plan, much of this should look familiar as we are really continuing progress on projects that you all have previously approved as part of the work plan. For the new projects, we focused on areas of opportunity from a One Fairfax racial and social equity perspective, as well as instances where proper commitments are in place or proper contributions are available for us to actually implement any plans that we might complete. For example, the Quander Property Master Plan, it's a new project on the work plan. It's located in a high opportunity area in terms of equity along the Richmond Highway corridor. And also in this instance, there are approved proffers that provide some funding for future improvements to this park. In terms of new planning projects, we're also focusing on support for agency resource management goals, including master plan revisions to develop and establish resource protection zones at Poplar Ford and additional parks that we're working with RMD to identify and move forward on. We've also been continuing to leverage design expertise to support different priority projects. For instance, you'll see the COVID Memorial Project has now been added to the work plan as well. And then, as I mentioned, a large part of our planning work is ongoing or a continuation from prior years. And those last two bullets on this slide, they fall into that category. And there are additional highlights that you can find on those in the item narrative. Next slide. I'll pass it back to Paul.
All right. Thanks, Sam. So the next steps, once the Park Authority Board provides feedback through September of the rest of the month here, then staff will return to the Park Board in October with recommended FY23 work plan for approval. So that's the entire process. Are there any questions?
Okay, if we're running a little short on time, so if there are some questions, could we forward those to you, Paul?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll get back to you then.
Okay, any other discussion?
Just quickly to, the reference was made to high equity opportunity zones. Is that something that has been shared with the board before in terms of where those are? And I admit I've probably missed a meeting or two, but I'm interested in at some point in time understanding or getting a copy of what those might be in terms of what the staff analysis has been. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Jim, there's a report available. I'll make sure we get it out. That talks about where the opportunity zones are, where the economic opportunity zones are. It's pretty extensive. It came out of the equity task force, the chairman's equity task force that was formed about 2 years ago, and that was part of the information. And and the study that came out of it. So I'll make sure that you get a copy of that report.
I appreciate that. I didn't know, I guess I wasn't aware of that. My fault, but anyway, thank you.
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, Paul, it looks like you're up for the next one too.
Right, so next slide, please. Okay. So the quarterly status report for the second quarter, and this is calendar year, calendar year, second quarter. So this report is in the board item. And this is the last report that'll be issued with the FY22 work plan. So moving forward, next time around in November, we'll have the updated quarterly status report, which will be based on the FY23 work plan. So I'll just walk through real quick some of the completed project slides here. So next slide, please. So in Drainsville District, we did some energy improvements out at the rec, or at Spring Hill Rec Center, and this will improve energy efficiency there. So this project came in at $180,000. This is replacing the panels and other equipment there that was failing. So this is a real central project out there. Next slide, please. All right, in Hunter Mill District, based on our dam inspections, we're regulated by the state on all our major dams. And so we had a few items flagged out at Lake Fairfax. So we had to do repairs on the principal spillway. So there was various cracks that had to be filled with epoxy, and then some of the energy dissipators were replaced. So this project was managed by one of our new project managers, Sayonara Aguilera. This came in under budget and had a schedule at $220,000. Next slide, please. In Mason District, next slide, please. So the largest project to be completed in this cycle was the Hidden Oaks Nature Center. This is a renovation and expansion. And so this included this entirely new addition. If you haven't seen it, it's a really cool looking facility out there. So matched the architecture of the old building. This came in at 1.5 million. And then there was some critical renovations to the old facility just to bring it up in line with the new. And so this came in within budget as well. So next slide, please. Out in Mount Vernon, next slide. So we replaced the playground out at the Woodley Hills Park. This was a real nice project, came in at $200,000. Next slide, please. Also, the Pohick Estates Park, or rather playground, was replaced, and this was $175,000 within budget. Next slide. And then out at the Mount Air Historic Site, there was demolition of an old tenant house building. So we completed that working with RMD. That was $123,000. Next slide, please. Out in Springfield, next slide. Replaced the irrigation system out at Greenbrier Park. So this was a large project. We had to straddle 2016 and 2020 bonds to fund this. So this came in as a final price tag of $639,000. It's a much needed repair or replacement. Next slide. And then the Pope's Head Park playground was replaced at a cost of $250,000. Next slide, please. And then out at South Run, there was some energy efficiency improvements in conjunction with the county's ESCO company. That's an energy service company. So this project was $65,000 to replace some of the HVAC system components. Next slide, please. Out in Sully District, next slide. At Chalet Woods Park, we replaced the basketball lighting with LED lighting, which is more efficient. And this came in at $64,701. Next slide, please. And out at the Cub Run Rec Center, these are more energy efficiency projects and components. So this was a smaller project that helps with the metering to reduce our utility bills out there. Next slide. All right, next up is the Manchester Lakes item.
Got that one. Melissa Emery, Planning and Development. Do scope approval for the Manchester Lakes playground replacement. This was identified as a priority in the 2020 Park Bond grouped playground replacement. It was originally installed in the late 90s, so it exceeds its useful life. The scope will be include the design and layout, the demolition of existing features, new equipment, borders, drainage, and ADA access with a budget of $150,000. We anticipate scope and design to be completed this fall, and construction would occur in the first quarter calendar year 2023. And we don't anticipate any change really in maintenance costs and no additional revenue. And we would expect a life cycle cost of $150,000 in year 20. Questions?
Any questions on this? We'll start with the Mount Vernon rep. Linwood?
No, I don't have any questions. I support this completely. I guess the one question is a little bit unrelated. Paul, have we put the bid out for the rec center at this point?
Paul Shirey, Planning and Development. Yes, the advertisement went out back on September 7th. So it's currently open up till October 12th.
Thank you for the update.
Is there a consensus to move the playground replacement related work at Manchester Park forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Before I adjourn, if there are any questions on the Planning Development Division quarterly project status report that Paul gave, we don't have much time for discussion, but you can contact Paul. If there's nothing else, I will hereby adjourn the Planning Development Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Quincy. Dr. Carter, are you there and where are you?
I am here. And here is at my residence in Franconia District. Had to think about that.
Thank you. All right. Chairman Quincy, it's back to you.
Back to me. Okay, Ken Quincy, and I will call the Budget Committee meeting to order and ask Mike Peters to introduce the first item.
Great. Thank you very much for this opportunity. The main portion of the Budget Committee discussion tonight will be talking through our proposed budget process, as well as the potential general fund budget request priorities that we have been working through at the staff and at the director's office level. Next slide, please. Just as a refresher, what the board had asked us to do is spend some time this summer as we outlined our process putting together these priorities, and to make sure that we had some opportunity for public engagement during this time. So as you can see here, we developed these baseline budget recommendations over the summer. And we are talking about all of the recommendations tonight, which is a large list that we'll be going through. Then we'll have a process that we will have different opportunities for the public to send comment and to talk through some of these issues that we've put out there until we get to October, which is when we'll have the Park Authority Board final review and endorsement of what these proposed budget priorities that will actually be submitted as part of the county budget process will look like. And then that would roll into the rest of the county budget process here, as you see, from February all the way through April. Next slide, please. So we have several different opportunities for input, and we've started talking with those who have been asking different budget questions and informing our advocates and friends throughout the county that they should be watching this presentation tonight. We will then be posting this presentation as well as the video on our website. You can see that site there. It's at fairfaxcounty.gov/park/publications-plans-budget. Then after this presentation, we will be putting together a much more detailed package as we've identified what the items are that the board would like us to push forward with. We will be releasing that on September 23rd with more detail, additional slide, dollar amounts, the different pieces that will be necessary to fully evaluate what these requests look like. We will then be making our presentation to the Budget Committee on September 28th of that next level package, giving them time between the 28th and October 12th to review those priorities and accept public comment and ultimately endorsing that final budget package. Now, for public comment, there are regular opportunities through our meetings, but we also are going to be accepting comments through our park mail at fairfaxcounty.gov email address, and we will be recording all of those questions and posting the answers to those as we go through this process. So with that, unless there are any questions, I will jump right into the summary slides that we've put together. Next slide, thank you very much. So we have separated the proposed budget requests into several different overall categories. Most of this is really focused on how do we continue to work through the macro issues related to the Park Authority, related to our funding model, related to doing the best work that we can do right now, and focusing on equity, of course, as we move forward. So you can see we have some regular operating budget impact items that we'll talk through, some impacts from new policies that have been passed by the Board of Supervisors, and some other areas where we have needs that have to be met. Next slide, please. Certainly taking care of what we have and making sure that we have the resources to be able to take care of everything from taking care of the environment to making sure that we have the resources necessary to deliver our programs and services, and making sure that we can also have a sound foundation to be able to move forward in projecting our useful life for all of our assets and all of our systems. We'll be talking a little bit about safety, and then on the next slide, with these equity-focused initiatives, we'll talk a little bit about where we are with the equity contract, the consult that we've been working through, and what that request will look like, as well as some other pieces. So with that, next slide. These regular operating budget impact items are, as we say here, those items that are required for us to continue to provide the level of service we're providing right now, and making sure that we have the funds, because costs, of course, go up. We have new acquisitions, we have parks that have new and evolved uses, and certainly we have inflation and issues related to the supply chain that we have to deal with. So with the next slide, this is where we're going to be focusing our internal requests, looking at those baseline increases. What are we experiencing with the cost of raw materials, with the cost of staffing, but also with the cost of our contracts out there? We have a lot of contracts throughout our system where we have vendors who are providing significant maintenance services to us, mowing services, pest management, several different contracts that we are seeing increases related to the costs that they're experiencing, and they have no choice but to pass those on to us, and for us to be able to continue providing the same level of service, we need to make sure that we are addressing those funding needs and keeping up with that. Next slide, please. During the period of FY22 and now into FY23, we have added 9.35 acres to our inventory. And we've also acquired other new properties like Fairfax Arms, Arrowhead Park. You can see the list right here. These are new properties that require additional funding, not only for our ongoing operating costs to be able to maintain, but also to stabilize. So this is a request like we had made last year to address that need for funding to maintain this property. So this is similar to the Consumer Price Index, the CPI baseline increase, but this is focused on the impact of bringing these new properties and new uses into our system. Next slide, please. We have been talking with the board for quite some time as we've been working on not only the internal policies and procedures related to our asset management program, but we are moving forward with our actual software system. And as part of this, as we're working with our Department of Information Technology, we have identified a partner to help us in replacing our Tririga system with a system called ServiceNow that is something that already exists in the county, so we can build on the economies of scale here. However, for the uses we have, which is managing all of our assets and the useful life of those assets, but also making sure that we are able to move towards mobile work order management. This asset management system will be implemented over the next 2.5 years. And to be able to start moving towards that, we are going to be requesting additional budget for the costs related to expanding the licenses for this system as we move forward, and also adding some additional help desk support specifically focused on making sure people are able to work in the asset management system. So this will form the basis for our work orders and for looking at the useful life and where we are in that life cycle for all of our assets, and will be a key as we move forward with our future CIP planning as well. Next slide, please. So here we are talking through our new policy budget impacts. And there are some things on here that we've talked about in the past, and they've come up again because we are focused on expanding our response as requested, but also on making sure, again, that we're doing the right thing in terms of what our mission is. So if you go to the next slide, as I know all of our board members are aware, our summer concert series came back in roaring force this past year. We have more than 150 performances and outdoor events each summer. Those performances have increased from generally an hour to an hour and a half. We have a longer season and we have increased costs. Now, the Board of Supervisors did add additional funds at the end of this past fiscal year. So we had one-time funds to get us through this past summer, but we need this to be part of our baseline going forward to make sure that we're able to continue providing across the board the high level of concerts that we've been able to provide. Next slide. So here, I'd ask Laura Great to jump in here in just 1 second, but this is focusing on the issue of bamboo removal on parkland. We are looking to be able to partner in several different ways with other county agencies, looking at DPWES, for instance, and working on with them on their renovation, especially watershed projects that go through parkland. But when we take a look at our overall system, we estimate that we have about 200 acres of running bamboo. And for us to be compliant with the Fairfax County Code that was passed in March and goes into effect in January, we need additional funding to be able to proactively mitigate bamboo. This cannot be done with our current invasive management funds because it's an entirely different and much more extensive process to be able to rid our parkland of invasive bamboo. And Laura, would you like to join in and talk a little bit about this?
Sure. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Good evening, everybody. This is Laura Gray from the Resource Management Division Director, and thank you, Mike, for allowing me a few moments of the presentation. Yes, as Mike was sharing, this new code does go into effect in January, and we are beginning to look at the development of a checklist and prioritization approach to being able to proactively address the bamboo that we do have on our property, and considering the equity components and making sure that equity is a key component to looking at and prioritizing and targeting bamboo removal. So we are actively making some headway on this right now. But as Mike mentioned, we do need to consider additional funding to be able to continue that effort as we move forward. This is a very large endeavor. And so we need to make sure that we have adequate resources to be able to target this over multiple years, because it does take multiple years in order to eradicate it. So thank you very much for the time. And as we continue on with the presentation, or if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you very much, Laura. Next slide, please. We've talked about zero waste. We've talked about parks recycling in the past. And just to bring everybody back up to speed, remember that County Code Section 109 has new requirements for recycling at non-residential properties. County Code stipulates that refuse collection containers with a capacity of 2 cubic yards or more must be accompanied by 1 or more recycling collection, and those recycling containers have to be emptied at least once weekly. With our current staffing capacity, we are not able to accomplish this across all of our 400 parks. We are working to put together a plan to be able to proactively add additional staff to provide ready available options, and to be able to have staffing 7 days a week instead of the staffing that we have available during the week right now, with people picking up trash as they can, taking away from other duties. We're talking about adding dedicated teams to be able to accomplish this throughout our system. Next slide. Then we start to move into taking care of what we have. And on the next slide, this is the flip side of the Parks Recycling Initiative. We talked about what we need to be able to do to meet those recycling requirements. But if we can go to the next slide, we're also talking about, again, adding additional staff, but also adding trucks so we can haul trash more effectively, getting rid of the unsightly dumpsters that we have in several of our parks that are often filled with non-parks waste. And we're also looking at then finding the capital funds available to add strategically located large compactors throughout our system, so that trash can be hauled, compacted, and then it's essentially packaged for DPW to be able to pick up as part of their regular rounds. So this is the flip side of recycling, and is another opportunity for us to be able to work very closely with DPW, address a need, and add dedicated staff so our current staff can focus on maintenance throughout our system. Next slide, please. Speaking of taking care of what we have, we are very much appreciative that the county board is recommending adding one-time funds as part of last year's carryover for our most urgent capital equipment replacement priorities. We also have about $200,000 annually available for this capital equipment replacement. But as we see here, we have 378 pieces of large equipment that's valued at over $7 million. And almost half of it is right now in a condition where it needs to be replaced and it's beyond its life expectancy. So we will be asking for an increase to that $200,000 baseline so we can have all of our movable capital equipment assets on a regular replacement cycle and be able to track those through their end of useful life and make sure that we're operating safely and efficiently. Next slide, please. Now, with all of this, of course, we have experienced so much, as we've talked about here with the board. Our staff came through COVID with just amazing progress. We are on the other side, it seems, with our programs, with what we're able to do in our rec centers and our parks, at our nature centers. But what we've also seen is that that requires a lot more IT support. So for those employees who are able to work remotely, we're continuing to do that in accordance with county policy. But we are asking for the county to fund a replacement cycle for additional laptops for us. Our agency allotment for machines has been set at about 575 since 2015. And we've grown since then. We have the need for additional hardware, but also with more than 60 staffed sites, we have the need to be able to add on to our help desk support that can help with the myriad of issues that come before us. We have a help desk that is 3 plus a supervisor right now, and they are often traveling throughout our system and answering phone calls on a regular basis just to keep people up and running. So this is one of those baseline investing in the internal services so we can better serve the public through having readily available technology and support. Next slide, please. Each year, we have talked about forestry funding, and the fact is that what we're able to budget in an annual basis only covers a fraction of just the cost of removing high-risk trees, trees that have fallen, trees that are at risk of falling. We do not have the budget to actually cover all of those general annual costs. And we also do not have the budget to be able to proactively work through our urban canopy and address trees that may just need minor maintenance or addressing some of those that may be diseased. So what we're talking about here is asking for an increase to that funding so we can address our responsibility as the largest landholder in the county with a huge urban canopy that needs to be healthy and well maintained. Next slide, please. So here we're going into safety, and you can see then when you go to the next slide, this is a little bit more detail on something that we've talked about in the past. We are going to be looking at a park ranger pilot program. Over the last 3 years, we have spent about $100,000 each year on police overtime to help us with responses on issues that are occurring at some of our different parks. We've had issues with graffiti, we've had issues with vandalism, and we've dealt with those issues. But what we've also seen is as we have an increased need for an enforcement presence, the police department is experiencing staffing issues as well. This has resulted in fewer police officers either available or willing to commit to overtime staffing for park security purposes. So we're seeing that we need additional resources to be able to create our own program to provide that proactive enforcement, to have park rangers in our parks where there are high risk, but also having park rangers available if there are issues in our campsites or in some of our other managed park areas as well. This, we're looking to create the capacity so we can create a program that's specifically focused on parks like our surrounding jurisdictions have as well. Next slide, please. This is where we're talking really about our very focused equity initiatives here. So if we go to the next slide, one of the first things that we're talking about here is right now we are looking at some initiatives to be able to acquire specialized vehicles that can then be outfitted and become mobile nature centers. We know that the Park Authority has many very beloved nature centers. However, several Fairfax County communities do have difficulty accessing them. Our nature centers are expensive to build and they're static. They require substantial staffing to operate. They serve visitors, implement programs, manage those resources, and often visitors need to have a car to reach them. So this is a limiting factor. What we're talking about here is the opportunity to bring the nature centers to our communities, to promote environmental stewardship and build relationships with the community, going to schools that may not be able to take a field trip to one of our nature centers, but creating something that we can bring the magic of our nature centers and our conservation efforts to schools and to communities that may not have the opportunities that so many of us do. That also ties very much into this next slide, which is the flip side of it. So if we're talking about mobile nature centers, we also see that there's an urgent need for additional recreational opportunities in underserved areas. Right now, as we know, our current program is run out of our rec centers, our staffed parks, and of course also FCPS locations. What we're proposing here is adding activation staff or teams that will take our programs and our events into the community, being able to increase the educational and recreational programs offered to the community. So it's that flip side, having mobile nature centers where we can bring that to the community, but also bringing these opportunities for more education and recreation to, again, those areas of high vulnerability within the county. Next slide, please. So here we are seeing an ever increasing need to be able to offer interpretation and translation services. We have bilingual staff who are amazing and wonderful, and the number of our bilingual staff are increasing, but interpretation and translation is not their sole function. What we're talking about here is employing contracts and other opportunities to be able to improve communication with all of our community members. We've seen through many of our recent engagements on some high-profile park and community center issues that by offering communication, offering documents, offering the opportunity to speak in one's own language, we're seeing that a lot of our participation is going up. So this would ensure equitable access to community meetings and other opportunities with the Park Authority. Next slide, please. So this is a placeholder for our equity request related to what's happening with our current equity contract, the consultation that's happening right now. We're working on a request and we do not expect the whole equity consult to be finished by the time the budget is prepared. But what we do expect is there will be some things that we could put in this request that would allow us to keep things as they are, not having to increase fees, not having to absorb additional costs while we're trying to figure out what that ideal revenue model looks like for us. Jay, did you want to add anything to this slide?
No, I think that you covered it. We will be bringing, obviously, when we compile that equity ask, we will be bringing it likely separate of this process. We want to make sure we have the correct number, so it might be a standalone item to add to our budget ask to this process. But thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Then on the next slide, this is not in our sort of official package of general fund budget requests, but it's another long-term issue that we've brought to the board before, and we're going to make sure that we're talking about through this process. So if you go to the next slide, this is the synthetic turf field replacement program of which we are the stewards. We are responsible to make sure that we are able to replace our synthetic fields about every 10 years. So that means that we have about 8 to 10 fields per year. And we are able to accomplish this, but we are going to be working very closely with the Department of Management and Budget to identify how we can absolutely know that we are able to plan forward in the funding in the out years. So we're not always trying to look for money at carryover or one-time costs, but attempt to get us to that number that would allow us to always have that baseline funding available. So we'll be talking more about that, but we want the board certainly to know that that is on the horizon. And this year we're covered, and we have a lot of amazing synthetic fields opening, like at Patriot Park North, but this is for the ongoing health of that system. Next slide, please. So as we move forward, you can see what we've done to get to this point in June, July, and August. Next slide. And here we are. This is September 14th, where we're providing this background. And we're talking through the impact and why we really looked at these different priority areas. And as we said earlier, we'll be releasing a more detailed package that will be in advance of the September 28th meeting, but that will be available for the public and the board on September 23rd. Then we'll move through, we'll have a discussion at the September 28th meeting, and then we will be finalizing with the Park Authority Board those final budget requests that the board will endorse as we move those into the general fund process as part of the county budget process. So next slide. Again, these are just the opportunities where people will be able to view this information, to be able to send their comments, and we will be collating that for the board as we move forward. And we are looking forward to working closely to put this final package together, and we are available to answer questions and to help this along.
Thank you, Mike. We're sort of running out of time, and we will be hearing more about the proposed budget. But if there are questions that we have, could we send those to you, Mike?
Please do.
Okay. We have one other item to address the allocation of funds for continuation of Masson Brook Volunteer Matching Grant Program.
Yes, we do not have a slide for this. This is an item that is in your board packet. And this was referred to earlier when Dan was talking about the MYS Masson Brook request. What we are asking is that the next $800,000 be released by the Park Authority Board to continue funding the Masson Brook program. We are 20 years into the program, and we have awarded approximately $2 million for projects that are total value of more than really almost $15 million. So what we're proposing is that this is released, and in line with the revised bond cash flow plan, we are forecasting expenditures to be up to about $160,000 per year.
Okay, we have discussed this previously, but any discussion on this?
Ron Kendall, I guess to Linwood's point earlier, we don't have an action item for this on the board meeting tonight. I don't think.
Yes, we do, Ron. Ron, yes, we do. Ron, I've added it. Ron, I've added it to the agenda. It will be an action.
Okay.
Any other questions? Is there consensus to move this forward for board action? Yes, no.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. If there's this is Ken Quincy. If there are no other items, I will hereby adjourn the budget committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Quincy. It is 7:14, and I'd like to call to order the September 14th meeting of the Fairfax County Park Authority. We begin all of our board meetings with a public comment period. And I will turn it over to our Public Information Officer, Judy Peterson.
Good evening, and thank you. Yes, this evening we do have two speakers. Our first speaker is Paul Billowis, and he will have 5 minutes to speak. And then he will be followed by Lucas Palakowski, and he will also have 5 minutes to speak. Mr. Billowis is on the line. Sir, your time begins if you would be kind enough to state your name and proceed.
My name is Paul Billowis, as she said, and I have worked for Fairfax County Health Department for almost 40 years. And through the years, I've taken a lot of training in emergency response, and of course had a lot of experience in different jobs and titles throughout my career. And two of the things that I'd like to speak about tonight are, to me, critical for safety of human life. And I see that from watching your presentation, there are a lot of money is being put in for the replacement of the turf on the fields, like $500,000 per item. And I hope you can spare some money for what I'd like to suggest. And what I'd like to suggest are shelters from thunderstorms. And you can start with the idea of shelter in place for a structure, building, county buildings, government buildings, regular buildings, they all have shelter in place. And you want to get there as quickly as possible to ward off any kind of doom and gloom that comes upon us. Well, when you're out in a park or a play field, there isn't any, or hardly any shelters to get into for a thunderstorm. And when you got children and strollers and handicapped, you want to get to a shelter as quickly as possible. And the nearest shelter is your car in most cases. And it'd be great to have shelters at all play fields and as many parks as possible where you don't have them quickly available to the patrons. So that's the first thing, have more shelters for a thunderstorm, because when you think about it, county policy is get out of harm's way as quickly as possible and don't get under a tree. So if you don't have any shelter, you could be struck by lightning. We're pretty lucky no one's got struck by lightning, but it would be good to have these shelters and put them in a budget. The next thing would be restrooms. Everybody has heard, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Well, that's the number one answer to preventing illnesses. And health department's been professing that for many, many years. And as you know from COVID, it's critical. Well, how can you wash your hands in a porta-john? You can't do it. They have, if you're lucky, they may have a hand sanitizer liquid in there, and that's about it. And it's recommended to use soap and water to wash your hands, not a sanitizer. Like I say, if you're lucky, you get a sanitizer in these porta-johns. So I suggest putting real restrooms in where there aren't any. Well, these porta-johns to me are just temporary, and they've always been used for permanent type of use in many places. Spend the money, it's money well spent, put in some real bathrooms. They act as a shelter also, besides being a bathroom. And if you incorporate them with a real shelter, then you got two things done at one time. And if you don't have the money, I would suggest try a GoFundMe, because GoFundMes are very well funded. People will see the need for these shelters. I believe people will agree with me. I'm sure you all will, that we need these shelters. We need restrooms, real restrooms. And if you could look at your budget and look at these parks and play fields, and the public would appreciate it, and you'd be happy yourself being at one of these and having to go to either a shelter or a bathroom. And I'd like to check back and continue with doing this. Is a great idea to speak directly with the board. I'd like to check back next month and see what you all think. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker is Lucas Palakowski. Sir, you have 5 minutes. Are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can, sir. 5 minutes, please.
Okay, I'm going to talk quickly because I have a lot of information, but I'd like to briefly talk to the board about contractors providing park services to children. And the background is you have a policy to ensure that your mission is achieved without compromising the safety of employees, volunteers, or the public. You also have a policy that says and requires that the park authority shall institute practical measures to eliminate or minimize injury to employees, volunteers, and customers. As a former risk manager and safety professional, I wanted to bring an essential area up to the board's attention for study and future action: the completely unrestricted and prolific use of waivers of liability and requirements for indemnification by various authority contractors providing recreational activities to park users on a fee basis. For example, children at summer camp, etc. Why is this important? It appears the authority has no language prohibiting such use of waivers or indemnification. What else? Such requirements likely shield such contractors from any liability for their acts or omissions and or negligence, and potentially put park users at risk of death, serious injury, or harm from such contractor activities. Such shielding through those waivers and indemnification lessen the incentive for such firms to effectively and safely manage their operations and activities and hire and retain good employees. It does reduce their insurance coverage because it places the burden onto both users and their parents and guardians for dealing with the aftermath of a death or serious disabling injury with absolutely no negligence attributable to the contractor, even if they were directly responsible for the event. I mean, I've been provided these requests for waivers and indemnifications myself as a user of park services by these contractors. It also places the authority and the county government at risk of a potential future public relations fiasco, where the authority did not keep park users' own safety at the forefront when seeking contractors to provide recreational services to authority users. It's kind of like stepping into a taxi cab and the taxi cab operator giving you a waiver and indemnification form that you need to sign, which absolves him, his whole company, and everyone associated from any liability, even if he was negligent and caused an accident that paralyzed or killed either you or your family members in the car. This is essentially what parents have to do nowadays with many of your recreational contractors. My discussion, all the measures that the authority puts in place should be designed to prevent or minimize such events from occurring. And if they occur, to ensure that those people who are injured are compensated if it's due to fault. To address such, an effective risk management and safety program must address requiring adequate insurance coverage and responsibility of contractors, not just to the authority, but also to the authority's customer base, the users, i.e. the children and the parents and guardians. Good contractors take responsibility for their work and services. Questionable ones do not stand behind their product or service. When they require these types of waivers and indemnification, that to me puts a real question as to whether they really are a good contractor. Contractors who effectively shift the fault liability burden from where it belongs on themselves, they're supposed to be the professionals, and instead move them onto the public, i.e. the users of park facilities. Those people aren't in any position to evaluate the risks. They just sign these waivers and requests for indemnification blindly. They also don't really have any assets, a lot of these firms. So I would ask that you consider in the future ensuring that waivers and requests for indemnification are not required of park contractors. This is consistent with your espoused safety policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perfect timing. We appreciate it. And I turn the meeting back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. This is Bill Bowie. So we'll go on to administrative items. Admin item number 1 is the adoption. No, okay, we'll do board resolution to honor Rick Owens, Golf Course Superintendent 3 at Laurel Hill Golf Club, for the service to the Park Authority and the residents of Fairfax County.
Ken Quincy, I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. Whereas Rick Owens, Golf Course Superintendent 3, has been influential in the tremendous success of Laurel Hill Golf Club, the Park Authority's premier golf facility. and a recipient of numerous national awards and the location of many prestigious tournaments. And whereas he came aboard in 2004 as the site superintendent to oversee the construction and of the club, and was instrumental in its successful 2005 public opening, which has led to record rounds of play, a membership waiting list, and a reputation of one of the top municipal courses in the country. And whereas in 2012, he oversaw a bunker renovation at Laurel Hill using the new Better Billy bunker method of drainage, an investment that has paid off handsomely with the course selection to host the 2013 United States Golf Association Amateur Public Links Championship, one of a select few national championships held by the USGA. And whereas Rick Owens was at the top of his game in 2016 and 2017, when he served as the president of the Virginia Turfgrass Council, an umbrella group serving Virginia's golf professionals, and another accomplishment that once again helped keep the course beautiful and led to Laurel Hill's selection to host the United States Disabled Golf Association National Championship in 2022. And whereas, even upon impending retirement from the Park Authority, Rick is working hard to complete an irrigation renovation, and as always has his eye on the next project that will sustain and improve Laurel Hill Golf Club. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Fairfax County Park Authority Board that it expresses appreciation and thanks to Rick Owens for dedicated and outstanding contributions to the Park Authority and the residents of Fairfax County, adopted by the Fairfax County Park Authority Board on September 14th, 2022. Congratulations, Rick. Is Rick available?
I'm here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Well, it's been an honor to be a Laurel Hill superintendent, and I've loved every minute of it. Father Time is catching up with me. It's time to move on and do something a little easier.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, I hope you will not be a stranger. I hope you will stick around and we'll see you on the courses and you'll do something that you'll thoroughly enjoy in your next act.
For sure.
Great. Any other board members have any other comments? All right. Thanks a lot, Rick. We appreciate it.
Great.
Countywide, admin item number 2 is the board resolution to honor Mary Youngs for service to the Park Authority and the residents of Fairfax County since 2004.
Ken Quincy, I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. Whereas Mary Youngs, a longtime employee, has been influential in the success of the Park Authority's Human Resources Group and has made a tremendous difference to the Park Authority employees, job applicants, and leadership who she assisted and guided for many years. And whereas she began as an exempt part-time position in August of 2001, a role she held until she became a merit employee with the Park Authority in August of 2004. And since those early beginnings, she became the quintessential fount of information that every organization hopes to have on their staff. Whereas Mary received numerous promotions over the years, but regardless of the title, demonstrates exceptional technical skills, attention to detail and tenacity, becoming the go-to person on a myriad of issues, ensuring all recruiting, payroll, FMLA, and other critical functions were completed in a timely manner. And whereas under her leadership during a 2019 vacancy, the HR office completed over 2,400 personnel transactions, processed over 110 position control forms, updated 75 position descriptions, and processed over 1,500 background checks. And her performance was critical to the Park Authority's ability to complete its task and bring aboard and retain a talented, dedicated, and competent staff. And whereas she received an Outstanding Performance Award from the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors in 2019 and continues to play a vital role in the human resources daily. And we know that Mary's departure will be challenging, and without a doubt, staff and leadership are going to miss her warm smile, sage advice, and willingness to go that extra mile. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Fairfax County Park Authority Board that it expresses appreciations and thanks to Mary Youngs for dedicated and outstanding contributions to the Park Authority and the residents of Fairfax County, adopted by the Fairfax County Park Authority Board on September 14th, 2022. Congratulations, Mary. Mary, the floor is yours.
I just want to say thank you. It has been a great time working with the parks and seeing all of the great developments that has gone on for the last 20 some years. It's, you know, a family. I really appreciate it. And I know I'll stay in contact with people, but again, it's an extended family that we just love each other. And thank you guys for recognizing me.
You're welcome, and best of luck. And again, don't be a stranger to the parks.
Well, we won't.
Good.
Okay.
Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, countywide admin item number 3 is the adoption of the minutes of the July 27, 2022 Park Authority Board meeting.
This is Tim Hackman. I move the adoption of the minutes of the 2022 of the July 27, 2022 Park Authority Board meeting.
I just need a second.
Ken Quincy, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. In action items, not on your printed agenda, but action item countywide A1 is actually going to be the allocation of funds for the continuation of Maston Brook Volunteer Matching Fund Grant Program as approved this evening in the Budget Committee meeting.
Ken Quincy, so moved.
Tim Hackman, I second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. A2 in the Drainsville District, Lewinsville Park, Maston Brook Volunteer Matching Fund Grant Program request from
this is Tim Hackman. I move to approve the Lewinsville Park Maston Brook Matching Fund Grant request from McLean Youth Soccer Association.
This is Linwood Gorham. I second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. Information items countywide FY22 fourth quarter budget review fund 10,001 general fund, countywide FY 2002 fourth quarter budget review fund 80,000 park services revenue and operating fund. All right, Chairman's Matters, welcome back. Seems like it's been forever since we've seen you, but there's been a lot of things going on. Again, kudos to the staff for really keeping things hopping this summer. We especially had issues around, you know, trying to staff our swimming facilities, our outdoor swimming facilities with lifeguards, and they did a yeoman's job, especially around the water mine, keeping it open as long as they possibly could. So thank you very, very much for that. We're certainly into our fall seasons. Parks are full on the weekend with football players and soccer players, and pickleball continues to expand, which is great. And I don't think I go anywhere with somebody not asking me when are we going to have more pickleball facilities? And I just have to tell them, stay tuned. And then last but not least, kudos to Laurel Hill, the Vietnamese Golf Association National Championship is going to be held at Laurel Hill in October. More details to follow. There will be about 240 golfers from all across the country on a two-day event. So we'll get you more details on that for sure. But it's a tremendous and prestigious event, and we're honored to be hosting it. So with that, I will turn it over to Director Cole.
Thank you very much, Bill. Allison, if you could share the screen. Thank you. Next slide. Try to go through these quickly. We had a break for August, so a lot of stuff happening. So National Farmers Week we hosted, and it's hosted annually by the Farmers Market Coalition and celebrated by farmers markets across the country. This year, we hosted it August 7th through the 13th, and we joined in celebration across all 10 of our markets. We collaborated with the Fairfax County Alliance for Better Bicycling. The Farmers Market team hosted the Bike to Farmers Market Week at the same time, which encouraged customers to ride their bikes to the market using bike-friendly routes. Fairfax County Farmers Markets welcomed Supervisor Lusk, Supervisor Walkinshaw, Supervisor Palchik, and Supervisor Stork at Kingston, Burke, Oakmar, and McCutcheon, Mount Vernon Farmers Markets, respectively. We want to recognize Supervisor Stork for participating in Bike to Market Week. The average customer count reached a season high during Farmers Market Week, demonstrating the importance of our local farmers and food producers to Fairfax County residents. It also provided a great opportunity for our staff to conduct a survey with customers to gather feedback and suggestions for the future growth of the markets. I definitely want to thank all of the vendors, volunteers, and customers for making Farmers Market Week such a success. Next slide. We had a major gift maximize thanks to the Park Foundation and FCPA teamwork. A birder photographer who enjoyed Eleanor C. Lawrence Park was very well known by park manager John Schaefer. Her sister had recently contacted the Park Foundation regarding a $50,000 memorial contribution. Park manager John Schaefer discussed the needs, and she tripled the gift in memory of her sister to $150,000 to fund and maintain the animal attraction and observations area. So we're very happy with that donation, and thanks for John for making that happen for us. Next slide. We had the 2022 4-H Fair on August the 6th, 2022. It was a phenomenal event. My children enjoyed it immensely. Anytime at Frying Pan Park, I think is a great time by all. I know I saw some of our board members there, and thank you very much for coming out to support. I think we have a video. Next slide.
This morning, I am honored to welcome you to our 72nd anniversary of the Fairfax County 4-H Fair Carnival.
Today, we are celebrating the 4-H program here at Frying Pan Farm Park. And so they have been here for over 70 years. And so this is a program that engages youth in a wide variety of activities, many of them involved with the farm animals that we have here at Frying Pan Farm Park.
People should come out to the fair because it's a unique experience. We live in Northern Virginia, so there's a chance that you'll be able to see a cow, a horse, a sheep, something that you haven't seen because it's so urban, but it's a great opportunity for kids to come out and see agriculture, real life in their hands and be able to experience it.
So this event is important to the community because this farm has been here for over 70 years, and it's the oldest working farm in Fairfax County. The fact that it's preserved as parkland for people to be able to come and view how food is made and agriculture works while also getting on a Ferris wheel and being able to have some cotton candy. It's just a wonderful day for people to come out, be with each other as a community, and really experience this wonderful park.
Last one. It's a great place for families to come and bring their kids. This is a working farm,
And that's true 365 days of the year. But with the 4-H fair here at Frying Pan Farm Park, you get to see even more. You get to see additional animals, you get to do the rides. So it's just a great time for families to come out.
Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so we wanted to let you know that Sarah and all of the operations folks are working very hard to roll out new countywide signs that are coming in the next months. We're trying to standardize our signs and provide opportunities to let patrons know that they're on parkland, even when we don't have enough room for the very, very large sign. So this is something that we will be bringing back and bringing to you and showing sort of where we're going with our new signs and how we're planning on rolling that out. Next slide. Okay, so speaking of the Watermine, I just wanted to make a little plug for our senior staff. We really did have, especially after college started back, a hard time getting lifeguards scheduled. And so all of the people who work at Watermine are all also certified to be lifeguards. And so late in the summer, when our water park was short of lifeguards, all of the managers and everybody and a lot of people in rec services who were qualified to lifeguard were all lifeguarding, and they needed help. So they put out the bat signal, and I'm so very proud that so many of senior leadership answered that call. I just want to point out a few notable folks: Cindy Walsh, the division director, branch manager Brian Laws, Mark Barton, Levi Lanehart, and Ginger Collin, plus other rec center staff and HR staff. What that really did was it provided the opportunity for some of our phenomenal young staff to put us to work and free them up, all of the rest of them up to do what they do best. So I just wanted to point out that was a really great level of teamwork. It was a lot of fun. I ended up at the front of it running into one of our park board members, Mr. Kendall, and his lovely wife were walking by the front of Watermine when that happened. So we got a little shot there. And the story, Luca put it out there. The story was picked up by VRPS, and it landed on the cover of the VRPS fall magazine. Next slide. So I just wanted to let you know some upcoming events. I believe Allison sent you these dates in an email. I just want to reiterate these dates for you to put on your calendar. This Saturday, we have the opening of Sully Community Center. The community center is not an FCPA facility, but in working on the needs of the community, they identified early on that they wanted another gym, and FCPA, we provided the funds in order to build a second gym at Sully Community Center. So the opening is on Saturday the 17th. Also on Saturday the 17th, there's an open house at Oak Hill from 12 to 4. On Saturday, September 24th, from 9:15 to 12, we're having Public Lands Day at Lake Fairfax Park. We're also celebrating the end of the My 420 Park Tour. There's the flyer on the right. We would love for you to come out and celebrate both things with us, and please let us know if you're able to attend that. And then on Friday, September 30th, 3 p.m. is our joint Board of Supervisor and FCPA Park Authority Board meeting. Next slide. And last, I just wanted to make you guys the first know I'm done. I have visited all 418 with Lake Fairfax being the last one. 419 parks. It's been a phenomenal experience, and we'll talk a little bit about it on National Public Lands Day. Channel 16 followed me around for the last few sites. I wanted to make sure, since we're having the last site at Lake Fairfax, as much as I love the Hunter Mill District, having been grown up there, I wanted to show a whole lot of love to all of the other districts. And so I did one last park in every supervisory district with that supervisor, and Channel 16 followed me on that tour. And they'll be doing a spot on the entire tour going through. It was a phenomenal experience walking these parks with the supervisors, and I'm really glad that I did the entire experience. So And I think that's the last slide.
Great. Thank you. And congratulations. And Mr. Kendall, I'm glad that you had an opportunity to come out to Lake Fairfax. All right, Mr. Quincy.
I just want to recognize and extend kudos to Park Authority staff for a very successful expanded 2022 summer concert series, which just concluded. I've heard nothing but positive comments. Nothing else.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Carter?
Yes. Again, I would like to thank the staff for their stellar work, and I'm giving special kudos to Judy and team regarding the upcoming Ellie Doyle Award preparations, and also to Bobby and the foundation for their excellent fundraising. And last, I had no idea that Lake Aquatine Park was such a beautiful, beautiful place, because the last time I was there before the anniversary, the 60th anniversary, was when I had to kind of judge or something at that paper boat thing. What do you call it?
Cardboard regatta.
The regatta. Paper boat race.
Yeah.
That. And it rained the whole time. So this time I was able to enjoy it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Faisal.
Nothing from me, sir.
All right. Tim?
Tim Hackman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I pass.
Ron?
Oh, I want to thank Jay for allowing us to have a walk around the water mine that day. It hadn't been our intention, but she did miss a spot because we looked at the rest of the park too, and there were another, 3,000 to 4,000 people up on the ball fields having soccer tournaments and baseball tournaments. So I would guess there had to be at least 10,000 plus people through that park that day. I don't know what the water mine numbers are regularly. I did want to mention I am watching Hoag Park as it comes together. Every couple of days, I wander over there to see if there's more dirt piles and more. I'm looking forward to seeing the grass go down. I know that gets to be about the end of it. And I'm looking forward to the pickleball courts going in. I think that's going to be my initial pickleball play date, will be when those courts are finished. I will take my new racket and balls out there and play around with my wife, see how it goes.
Good deal.
Want to mention that Green Spring Garden is having its fall plant sale. So Jay, if you want me to bring any plants with me on the 24th for the tree planting, I can pick them up at Green Springs on Saturday for you if you'd like. That should be it for me, and I'm happy to see everybody. I missed you all in August.
Great. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's also very good to see all of us again, and looking forward to when we can get together personally. And I understand that might be for a while, and that might be for the best. But I also wanted to thank staff for their efforts during what is a very difficult time to keep communications going. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Kyle?
Nothing for me.
Linwood?
I pass.
Mike?
Yeah, I just want to quickly echo what was said earlier about the concert series. Summer concerts are always painful with all of the weather and all the other issues and everything else involved. So kudos to the staff for everything there, but also just thank them all, the staff also, for everything that was done and is being done to get all the sports stuff going for the fall season. All those fields, all the marking of all those fields, all the interesting parking that goes on, whether it's on a weekend or during the weekday when all the practices are going on. Just thank everybody for everything you're doing to make that all happen. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, sir. And COVID is still alive out there, and it still is affecting us every day. So please be careful out there and take your precautions.
That new booster is out. I got it last Friday.
Yeah, I have to schedule it. Mine's next Tuesday or Wednesday. So do it if you can. All right, with that, we will go into closed session.
This is Mike Thompson. I move that the Park Authority Board recess and convene in closed session for discussion and consideration of matters enumerated in Virginia Code 2.2-3711 and listing the agenda for the meeting as follows. The discussion and consideration of the acquisition of publicly held real property for a public purpose or of the disposition of publicly held real property where the discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of a public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3, the discussion of property in the Springfield District.
Tim Hackman, I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. We will now go into closed session for approximately 15 minutes. Thompson?
This is Mike Thompson. I move that the Park Authority Board return to open session.
Tim Hackman, I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries.
This is Mike Thompson. I move the Park Authority Board certify to the best of each member's knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Virginia Code 2.2-3711 and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the board.
Tim Hackman, I second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. Mr. Thompson?
This is Mike Thompson. I move to add the property in Springfield District to the work plan as discussed in closed session.
Tim Hackman, I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries. It is straight up 8 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for your diligence. It went a little extended this evening, but have a great weekend. Be safe, and we'll see you soon. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.